If you were there or even just watching the live stream, then you remember just how monumental this trailer was. The crowd went absolutely insane. After years of rough outings like Lost World and the disaster that was Sonic Boom, the Sonic franchise had become a bit of a joke again. For a while, it felt like we were back in that weird post-Sonic 06 era, where hope for the series was low, and honestly, it was kind of embarrassing to be a Sonic fan. But then, on July 22nd, 2016, something incredible happened. A new trailer dropped. Bold, retro, and dripping with attitude. It looked like a classic Sonic game, but no one knew exactly what it was. Was it a remake? A new entry? A fan game made official? The questions were everywhere, but one thing was clear, it had a name. Sonic Mania. After more than 2 decades, we were finally getting another true-to-form classic Sonic game. And just like that, Sonic Mania had more energy and excitement behind it than the last several Sonic games combined. And honestly, it deserved every bit of the hype. But now that the dust is long since settled, 8 years later, how does Sonic Mania really hold up in 2025? Well, that's the question I want to answer in this video. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about Sonic Mania 8 years later. So, for context, what is Sonic Mania exactly? Well, at its core, Sonic Mania is a love letter to the Genesis era Sonic games, a retro-style platformer that manages to feel both nostalgic and brand new. Developed by longtime members of the Sonic community, including Christian Whitehead, aka the Taxman, and the teams at Headcanon and Pagoda West Games, Mania reimagines iconic zones from the original trilogy while introducing entirely new stages packed with creativity and flair. It all runs on an engine that perfectly captures the tight, momentum-based physics that define the classics. In a lot of ways, I would say that Sonic Mania is the true Sonic 4, and that's not something that should be said lightly. And make no mistake, Mania had some huge shoes to fill. The original Sonic games are still to this day some of the best the genre has ever seen, and following that legacy, well, clearly it's not that easy, as we've all seen with Sega's earlier attempts, if you can call it, at a Sonic 4. So, with all that said, how does the game actually play? Does it truly stand shoulder to shoulder with the Genesis classics, or is it just another failed attempt to recapture that old school magic? A core part of Sonic's gameplay identity is the momentum-based physics and platforming. Sonic's movement isn't based on a fixed running speed like many other platformers are. Instead, acceleration and deceleration are baked into his core physics and design, making momentum and player control feel much more natural and responsive. You lose speed when going uphill and gain speed when going downhill. If you curl into a ball and roll down a slope, you can build up massive momentum, and that is where the level design really shines, in that simple interaction. Take for example the original Sonic the Hedgehog. In Green Hill Zone, as you can see, there's an item box perched right on top of this loop-de-loop in the very first level, Green Hill Zone. To reach it, you need to hit a slope jump just right using Sonic's momentum to clear the loop and grab the item. Similarly, in Sonic the Hedgehog 2's Emerald Hill Zone, there's an extra life monitor tucked away that requires you to use a ramp at the perfect speed to reach it. These are deliberate design choices that show that the stages were crafted to leverage Sonic's physics. Without that careful interplay between terrain and momentum, these kind of satisfying, skillful maneuvers just wouldn't be possible. When the physics aren't implemented properly, like in Sonic 4, the whole game just feels off. Level design has to rely more on scripted or automated sections to compensate, which of course limits player freedom and makes the gameplay feel less fluid, which in a Sonic game is a sin. However, I am happy to report that Sonic Mania nails the classic physics perfectly, making the controls feel responsive and allowing the level design to take full advantage of slopes, loops, ramps, just like the best the Genesis had to offer. And that brings us to the real star of the show, level design, because Sonic's physics don't mean really much without stages that know how to use them. Luckily, Sonic Mania delivers some of the most creative and satisfying level layouts in the entire series. To say Sonic Mania has good level design would be an understatement. This game has immaculate level design. Every stage feels like it was crafted in a lab, specifically to work in harmony with Sonic's momentum-based movement. As with any good Sonic game, the levels are more than just getting to the end, it's all about how you get there. When I think about Sonic level design, I tend to break it down into three core pillars: exploration, platforming, and speed. And these pillars go as follows. Exploration is about how expansive the level is, how many hidden pathways there are, alternate routes, or secret goodies that are tucked away off the beaten path. It rewards curiosity. Then there's platforming. And I say platforming is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go over it anyway. So platforming is about how well you're navigating the terrain, jumping, dodging, and timing your movements across platforms and hazards. And then of course, this is a Sonic game, so you can't have a Sonic game without the speed. Speed is where the adrenaline kicks in. Speed is basically just how fast the level is going, how much flow is there, and how hard is it to keep the speed. Now, every good Sonic stage mixes these three elements in its own unique ratio. Some zones lean into the heavy speed, others challenge your platforming reflexes, and a few are very large, open-ended, and begging to be explored. And I think that's what makes Sonic level design so dynamic. It truly can adapt to how you want to play. Sonic Mania understands this formula perfectly. Nearly every zone in the game hits all three pillars, but each one of these zones also tend to specialize in one area, creating a unique rhythm and identity for each of the zones. Now, I won't break down every single zone because we'd be here until Sonic Mania 2 releases, but I will highlight a few standout stages that I think really show just how masterfully this game's level design truly is. Of course, we gotta start with the Green Hill Zone. Not only is it the tutorial zone in Mania, it's also the very first stage in Sonic history. Just like in the original, this version of Green Hill has a very solid balance of all three design pillars: exploration, platforming, and speed. You've got ramps that can launch you high into the sky, hidden pathways behind breakable walls, and of course, on the high routes you have some classic platforming. Mania also introduces new mechanics that build on the original's foundation. Most notably, you have shield-based interactions. For example, the fire shield now lets you burn through those spiky wooden bridges, opening up shortcuts and secrets. And speaking of shields, Mania does an excellent job integrating their powers throughout the game. Sonic is the only character who can actually use the special shield abilities, and since he lacks the vertical mobility of, say, Tails or Knuckles, this gives him some much needed movement options. The level design takes that into account, rewarding Sonic with access to paths he'd otherwise not have access to, obviously. It's a clever way to add depth and character-specific replayability. Also worth noting, for all the remixed zones in Mania, Act 1 typically stays pretty close to the original layout, with even some having direct callbacks to past level design. But Act 2 is where the creativity really kicks in. For example, in Green Hill's case, Act 2 introduces these zip lines that launch you into new routes, or, if you're not careful, straight into traps. It's a simple addition, but it keeps things fresh and engaging without overcomplicating the experience all too much. And for the record, most of Mania's new gimmicks are genuinely pretty fun. Except for the bubbles in Hydro City, but we'll get to that later. So, Green Hill is a pretty solid introduction to the game, a balanced level that teaches the player everything they will need in order to succeed in this game. The next zone after this is Chemical Plant. This zone takes off the training wheel, so to say, and introduces a lot more complexity to the way you traverse the level. Let's get into it. So this is where the game really starts to open up. Chemical Plant takes everything Green Hill does and simply ramps it up, pun entirely intended. As you can see, there's a much bigger focus on speed in this level. You got long slopes, these high-speed tubes that launch you all around, and of course, a bunch of speed boosters scattered everywhere to keep things moving along. Act 2 is where things get a little bit more interesting, however. It throws in this new gimmick, this blue and green gel stuff that lets you bounce all over the place. It completely changes how you move through the level. The gel causes Act 2 to be a very vertical stage, but even with the verticality, it still keeps up that momentum-focused design. It doesn't feel slow or awkward, it just flows in a different direction. Literally. This is also one of the zones where the bubble shield actually comes in handy. Yeah, it stops you from drowning in the water sections, but it also makes it way easier to bounce your way through some of the trickier platforming sections. It adds a nice layer of flexibility depending on which route you take. And if you look at the stage maps for both acts compared to something like Green Hill, the shift is obvious. Chemical Plant is bigger, more complex, and has a lot more going on overall. Even with how tall Act 2 is, the horizontal parts still keep that quick pace going. It's a great example of how Mania doesn't just recreate old zones and call it a day, they actually build upon them and make them feel fresh again. Flying Battery Zone strikes a great balance between speed and exploration, but it definitely leans more towards the exploratory side. This stage is packed with secrets, hidden paths, alternate routes, and plenty of rewards for curious players. The electric shield in this stage actually gets a real use here. It doesn't just protect you from lightning and stuff like that, it transforms how you navigate the level, being able to magnetically cling to ceilings that opens up entirely new pathways that you otherwise couldn't access. And it makes every playthrough feel a little bit different depending on how you use it. Act 2 in particular is by far the best designed level in this entire game, at least in my opinion. It's layered, dynamic, and it's constantly shifting. And the reason it's constantly shifting is because of the coolest gimmick ever. One of the coolest things about this level is that you can seamlessly move in and outside the airship throughout the stage. It gives the level this semi-non-linear feel to it, like the whole ship is this interconnected playground you get to explore. It's a zone that rewards experimentation and replayability, especially if you go hunting for those tucked away secret areas with all their goodies. Flying Battery Zone is just structured enough to keep you on a guided path, but it's open enough to feel like every run can be its own little adventure. Then we have Lava Reef, a zone that's all about platforming precision. Sure, there's exploration and speed in there too, but the star of the show is the terrain itself. Collapsing platforms, rising lava, tight jumps, you get the idea. This level demands you slow down and really engage a little bit more deliberately with the obstacles. The fun part about this level is how once you know your route, you can still get some pretty good speed here. It takes a bit of replay to really learn this level's design. And make sure you're careful when playing this level or else you end up like me in this clip here. So far, most of this discussion has focused on Sonic, and that's intentional. Since he's the main character, most people will likely pick him first, and only play as him, seeing as not that many people actually replay games. But Sonic Mania has a full cast of playable characters, and each one brings their own unique flavor to the experience. Tails can fly, Mighty can tank hits from spikes and projectiles, and when he jumps he gets a cool hammer drop, and Ray can glide around the map like Cape Mario from Super Mario World. These abilities fundamentally change how you approach the level design, opening up alternate paths and shortcuts in really fun ways. For example, I would say Tails is like the easy mode of this game, since he can fly over large chunks of danger. But if you're looking for something more unique, you may want to check out Knuckles, as he has something that differentiates him from all the other characters. Knuckles, just like the others, has different abilities with his glide, climb, and shorter jump. But what really makes his playthrough stand out amongst the others is his exclusive content. Knuckles not only gets an exclusive boss with the Heavy King, but he also gets exclusive stages and routes designed just for him. Zones like Mirage Saloon Act 1 and Lava Reef Act 2 are completely different when you play as him, and they make great use of his kit with tougher platforming challenges and spike-heavy layouts. Honestly, Knuckles feels like the hard mode in this game, since his slower pace and shorter jump height force you to engage more with the game's trickier level design. No matter who you choose though, Sonic Mania is a blast to experiment with. The characters aren't just cosmetic, they generally give the game replay value and keep each run feeling fresh. Hopefully by now, I've made my case. Sonic Mania's level design is downright stellar and a big part of why this game is still so beloved to this day. Every zone is unique, fun, and bursting with creativity. But if you're a longtime Sonic fan, you've probably noticed something. Every zone I've highlighted so far is from a previous game. And yeah, I think that's worth talking about. Some people argue that Sonic Mania leans too hard on nostalgia, that it's more of a rehash than it is a fresh and new experience. And personally, I don't think that's an entirely fair thing to say. The criticism that Sonic Mania relies too much on nostalgia has really only gotten worse over the years, because the games after it simply cannot help themselves when it comes to rehashing previous level themes. Green Hill, Chemical Plant, again and again and again and again. Take Sonic Frontier Cyberspace levels for example. Not only are they using old themes, but they literally rip level layouts straight from Generations, Unleashed, and Sonic Adventure. It feels less like a throwback and more like a copy and paste job so people can soy jack at the sight of Green Hill one more time. However, I think Mania handles nostalgia in a much more thoughtful way. Yes, there are a lot of returning zones, but they're reimagined in a way that I believe makes them new and fresh, especially in the Act 2s like I have previously mentioned, where there are new gimmicks, mechanics, and level layouts that completely change up the way you play these levels. These remixes are a love letter to what came before, and that's what I think is the key difference between games like Generations and Mania and Forces and Frontiers, is that Generations and Mania use nostalgia as a foundation, not as a crutch. The callbacks are there, but they're wrapped in a creative, high-quality design. It's all about making the old feel new again and not vice versa. I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said? This game looks and sounds amazing. T. Lopes absolutely crushed it. As a longtime member of the Sonic fan community, his work on Sonic 2 HD already put him on the map. And now that he has Mania under his belt, well, I mean, there's nowhere this man can't go. Every track perfectly fits the level it's paired with, and it pulls you straight into the high-speed action. And the visuals are just as high quality as the soundtrack. The sprite work here is the best the series has ever seen. Every animation is bursting with personality and charm. The characters are expressive, dynamic, and just very fun to watch in motion, especially Sonic. Sonic Mania is a visual and auditory marvel. So this will be a quick section, just a handful of things I wanted to mention that didn't quite fit anywhere else, but still deserve some love. First off, I think the bosses in this game are actually pretty solid. Classic Sonic bosses usually get a bad rap, but Mania honestly has some of the better ones in the entire series. The two final bosses are cool, the Metal Sonic fight might just be the best one outside of the Sonic Heroes one, and come on, the Mean Bean Machine boss is just awesome, such a cute reference. Also, I really enjoy this cutscene with Knuckles before the Heavy King fight. It's short, it's silly, and it cracks me up every time. Oh, and I probably should have mentioned this during the level design section, but after editing this video for 3 days straight with no breaks, my brain has kind of turned into soup. But anyway, Titanic Monarch, the final zone, is an amazing final stage. Instead of being a level with many alternate routes and pathways, this level instead goes for a different type of design. This level is a tight, linear section of challenges. Act 1 has you climbing up the exterior of this massive robot, dodging electrical traps, spike pits, and all sorts of chaos. A fun fact, if you don't know, is that if you have the lightning shield, you can actually ride these electrical elevators to the top. Pretty cool, huh? Act 2 is even cooler in my opinion, because it starts you off in this central hub room, right? And you have to complete 4 different obstacle courses before you can move forward to the final boss. It's like a gauntlet level, and I genuinely wish more Sonic games did this. The only other final levels I kind of feel this creative are Eggman Land and Unleashed, Canon's Core from Adventure 2, and maybe End of the World from Sonic 06 if you squint your eyes. But anyway, that's all of my miscellaneous thoughts. This video's gone on long enough, so I think it's time to wrap this up, yeah? So, to go back to the question I posed at the beginning of this video, does Sonic Mania still hold up in 2025? Well, yes. This game is everything a Sonic fan could ask for. It's fun, it's replayable, the music is phenomenal, just the whole package is just so damn good. In my opinion, I think good game design is timeless. And no matter what comes next, no matter how many other 2D games they come out with, Sonic Mania will always be the gold standard that any future title can be measured against. Critics and fans alike agreed with me. When this game released, it released to nearly universal praise. 9s and 10s across the board. I don't think I've ever seen a Sonic game so unanimously loved. And honestly, this game deserves every single bit of it. Mania single-handedly brought Sonic back from the brink, and you can still feel the impact it's left on this franchise to this day. But Sonic Mania wasn't the only game announced at that 2016 event. No, there was another game. A mysterious 3D Sonic game known only at the time as Project 2017. A game that promised to be bold, ambitious, and modern. That game was Sonic Forces. But the story behind that one, well, that's a tale for another time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Sonic Mania really is something special, and even 8 years later, this game reminds me just why I love this franchise so much in the first place. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and let me know your favorite level down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And hey, I'm just getting started. I've got a lot more coming soon, including a potential deep dive into Sonic Forces. So, if that sounds interesting, consider subscribing and sticking around. Until then, take care.